The top stories of the week with added depth and context from our team of reporters. Well, we here call it the Daily Debrief. Hello, everyone. I'm Todd Quinones. Well, viewers like you are asking for more depth, and so here is exactly where you're going to find it. Let's jump right in. Metro Police making it clear the guilty verdicts, well, they were the right verdicts. But the Derek Chauvin trial and also the murder of George Floyd, they're certainly putting a spotlight now on police training and also policies, and Metro addressing their own reforms that they have made, like banning chokeholds and also a neck restraint. And I got the chance to ask Under Sheriff Christopher Darcy what more changes may come. I'm curious, going forward, will you guys be using this case, the Derek Chauvin case, in your training now moving forward?
Well, I will tell you this. That's not within our training, and I think there's not a person on this planet that looks at that and thinks that that's okay. So that's never been part of our training, nor will it be part of our training. But yes, obviously, the illustration of what not following policy results in, I think, sends a powerful message.
Under Sheriff Darcy is saying the murder of George Floyd should have never happened, saying that they have been working for years now to make sure Metro does not have the kind of environment where an officer like Chauvin feels welcomed. Darcy contends that Metro is trying to make sure what happened to Floyd won't happen here in Las Vegas.
So that when we have a suspect in custody, we ensure that they are breathing and their breathing is not restricted when they're in custody. Mandating a duty to intervene and a duty to report when an officer sees another officer or a supervisor sees an officer doing something improper. Providing more direction in what de-escalation really means.
And so, you know, there is that saying, trust but verify. And so tonight I spoke with community leaders. They have been working with Metro now for years to make some of those reforms. And so I wanted to get their take on what Metro is doing.
And just prior to the George Floyd event, we had gone through a refinement. The committee had, the Multicultural Advisory Council had refined the in-custody policy that was far beyond what you see in Minnesota. You can't even lay a person on their stomach. It's in-custody care. And the Multicultural Advisory Council can probably refine probably 1/3 or 1/4 of that policy.
And that was Mujahid Ramadan. Now, he is the chairman of the Multicultural Advisory Council that works directly with Metro. Now, he tells me, yes, Metro is not perfect, but the department is listening and is certainly walking the walk when it comes to making reforms.
Earlier this week, the court trial that gained international attention came to a conclusion as former police officer Derek Chauvin was found guilty of all 3 charges in the death of George Floyd in Minnesota. KTNV's Todd Quinones went into our community here in Las Vegas to get immediate reaction, and he joins us now. Todd, you spoke to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's Undersheriff Christopher Darcy following the verdict. What did you learn from this conversation and how the city reacted to the verdict?
You know, well, first of all, Metro came out very loud and clear to say that the guilty verdict that the jury had reached today was the correct verdict. And they said quite clearly the death of Mr. George Floyd should have never have happened. And, you know, then they went into what their own policies and reforms have been about over the past couple of years. And they addressed a lot of issues that Metro has been working on even before the murder of George Floyd. One being, you know, banning such holds as a chokehold, certain neck restraints, also reforming the way that they handle a suspect once they are in handcuffs, and in that case, maybe in the case like George Floyd, you know, on the ground. They recognize that when someone is handcuffed and in the prone position laying down, they can have trouble breathing. So their policies have directly, you know, reflected that, and then they have changed their policies to say officers have to make sure that someone who is in handcuffs, you know, can properly breathe. They've also instilled the different measures which allows and encourages and even demands other officers who might see a fellow officer doing something potentially illegal or certainly something that's not been part of their training to step in and intervene. And they also talked about, you know, policies of de-escalation. We hear that word a lot, but they talk about how that is really being such a key part of their training. And, you know, as a reporter and anchor person, been in the news business now for 25 years, it's our job to be a little bit cynical and to question any authority, whether it's law enforcement, a political group, or a mayor, or, you know, what have you. But I think today, during the meeting with Metro, you know, they also had there some community leaders who are part of their advisory, their multicultural advisory committee, which they've been working now with for years on, training and tactics and involving themselves in the community, and in particular communities of color. And so in talking to, many of these people are reverends and church leaders as well. I wanted to make the point today to talk to them to say, okay, Metro's, talking the talk, but are they walking the walk? And the feedback I got from them was overwhelmingly yes. That yes, Metro is not perfect. There are still, changes that need to be made, but that Metro has been more than a willing partner to listen to some of these concerns by the community and to do what they can to mitigate, obviously something that like what happened in Minneapolis.
Now, after that, you did host a Bridging the Divide special with your co-anchor, Trisha Keene, and you spoke to different community leaders as well. What was your takeaway from those leaders in regards to this verdict and how Las Vegas itself has changed?
I was reminded once again, the more people you talk to, the more responses you're going to get, and the more varied responses you're going to get. It's always a good reminder in the news business why you got to talk to as many voices as possible. Because I was, obviously I don't live in a bubble. We can't look at this case in a bubble, but I just thought, just in general, the overwhelming reaction would be somewhat of a sigh of relief that, okay, this went the way it should go. Justice, as we know it, was served in this case. But there were people on the panel who felt like this really changed very little, if anything. And there was no reason to celebrate is the wrong word, but there's no reason to feel anything as like anything's changed. Because they said, going back to the case involving Emmett Till, and the history of this country and law enforcement and negative interactions and the killing of people in the Black communities has been, storied in American history. And so, that was kind of like a shake a little bit for me to say, okay, I have to keep in mind that people have a long view. Most of us, I think, probably had this short view on it today. And I think it's okay to, hey, feel some relief, feel like justice was served, the right verdict came down. Don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of people in our community who kind of taking a much longer view on this and saying, we'll see, we'll see. And that's what I was reminded of the most today.
Well, thank you, Todd. I do appreciate you stopping and talking in regards to this daily debrief and this important topic. Now, everybody out there, don't forget you can replay the entire Bridging the Divide panel discussion on demand right now. Just click the back button on your remote, scroll down to the digital exclusives to watch. For more of today's big stories, visit ktnv.com and stay with us for more local coverage after the break right here on KTNV Streaming.
And welcome back to the Daily Debrief, an in-depth look at the top stories of the week. For more details on any of the stories that we're talking about, just head to ktnv.com.
The decision from Clark County Commissioners is huge news for local businesses. Some say it allows them to try to be flexible in order to attain that goal of being open up 100% by June 1st. It won't be too long before more spaces open up at Curry Zen in Chinatown. The restaurant operating at 50%, and manager Junta Zembayashi says that's been a challenge, calling it a game of Tetris.
Just kind of fit customers in the right place at the right time. We've got to make some people wait. We lose some customers, and we got to shift people in however we can.
He'll likely be able to remove the X's marking tables off limits. Clark County Commissioners approving a plan Tuesday allowing businesses to increase capacity from 50 to 80% starting May 1st. Table capacity will be increased to 12. Zembayashi says it's a big relief.
Having that eliminated and having the higher capacity restrictions can definitely help us with our operation flow and letting people come in and out a lot smoother and faster.
As more people get vaccinated, Zembayashi says he's optimistic the restaurant will be able to bounce back as restrictions continue to loosen.
Seeing a lot more customers, both from locals as well as out-of-state folks visiting in the past few weeks. So I think it is a trend that people are eager to eat out and come back to Vegas.
With the plan now approved by county commissioners, it then goes to the state COVID task force as well as Governor Sisolak's office for final approval. Jeremy Chen, 13 Action News.
Clark County Commission voted to increase capacity limits at Las Vegas area businesses from 50%, where it's at now, to 80% beginning May 1st. And that's when counties are supposed to take over control of their COVID-19 mitigation methods. Now, this plan that was approved today still has to go to Sisolak's office and become approved by the governor. So my first question to Jeremy, who's on the story today, is why does the governor need to approve the plan if it's set for May 1st? Isn't that the whole point? Like, don't the counties get to determine that?
Well, yeah, the simple answer is he still has the final authority, although he's giving counties more flexibility to make their own rules. It used to be you have to follow the rules that the state set. This time it's more like the state says you can make your own rules, and then we'll take a look at them and see if they're still kosher. That's basically it.
What about the restaurant that you spoke to today? What do they think about the 80% capacity limit compared to 50, compared to 100?
At the restaurant I talked to, they basically said they were thrilled to hear capacity was increased from 50 to 80%. And in fact, I know Governor Sisolak on June 1st says he wants to see businesses open at 100%. It's going to make it easier for them, for the restaurant to open at 100% on June 1st, if that's the goal, because then they can slowly step up their seating, they can step up, their staffing, maybe they need to find some people to hire or something like that, because obviously you're going to have more customers inside the restaurant. More customers means more employees are needed to handle the load. So for them, it's slightly easier.
Last question I have actually is what is the capacity limit contingent on?
Right now, obviously it's contingent on the numbers that we're seeing here in Clark County. Thankfully, they've been trending downward. It has slightly ticked up a little bit, but not as much as we've seen in other states across the country. And health officials during the commission meeting were confident that we're going to stay at a level where we can continue to open up. So so far, it looks very optimistic. We can hopefully reach 100% by June 1st, or at least 80% by May 1st.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Appreciate your time on that. There's a lot more on today's big story. You can check it all out at ktnv.com and stay with us for more local coverage after the break.
And welcome back to the Daily Debrief, an in-depth look at the top stories of the week. For more details on any of the stories that we're talking about, just head to ktnv.com.
There are job fairs held almost daily at a variety of different businesses, including hotels and casinos, but temp agencies and recruiters say times are tough to find people who want to work. Las Vegas is getting back to business. That means jobs and hiring people. Job fairs like this one at Circa had people applying, but other companies say it's a struggle.
We are a pre- and postnatal fitness company, so we offer basically fitness programs for moms in every stage of motherhood.
Jessica Peralta is the owner of Fit for Mom Las Vegas. She's having a tough time filling vacant positions from trainers to support staff.
Before the pandemic hit, before the shutdown, we were at a staff of 27. We're a small business. And right now, we're actually sitting about a staff of 9. So we're looking to replenish back to that full team of 27.
Temp agencies and recruiters say, indeed, finding willing and qualified applicants is a tough task right now.
I've been in employment and staffing for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this, ever.
Sonia Pedowick owns Torian Consulting Group. She says even good high-wage jobs are getting fewer bites.
The amount of applicants that they're getting is like 2 or 3, whereas a year ago, there'd be 20 people applying for those jobs.
Sonia believes there are several factors at play. First, the move to working from home has made in-person work less appetizing for some. There's also extended federal unemployment benefits, and companies are tightening belts on compensation, paying less for the same job post-pandemic.
And I also think that some companies are limiting the capacity from a compensation perspective. So the candidates might not feel that the salaries that are being offered are as competitive. So they're willing to hold out a little bit.
So I feel like it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle where there's a lot of moving parts, and we're just working to take it one step at a time and bringing on staff that's very much needed.
Jessica says women and moms really juggled a lot during the pandemic, including distance learning for school-aged children, and many of them left the workforce. Joe Bartels, 13 Action News.
And welcome back to the Daily Debrief, an in-depth look at the top stories of the week. For more details on any of the stories that we're talking about, just head to ktnv.com.
As Vegas continues to loosen restrictions and businesses begin normal operations, we have seen more and more job fairs announced in the Valley. Employers just looking to fill new positions, maybe even some that were, lost during the pandemic. But those employers are saying that they are not getting in enough job applications from prospective hires. Joe, one of the top comments we see on social media around this issue has been unemployment benefits. People just questioning if benefits are too high compared to the jobs being offered. What do we know about pay and these jobs that need to be filled?
What I found in my reporting, it's really a gamut. There's different jobs, and we've seen a number of job fairs, as you mentioned, with hotels and casinos, looking for really every kind of worker that's available, from people who clean rooms to customer service to really a whole host of them. And then we've also seen in my story that I'm working on, high wage jobs. We're talking about systems engineers and project managers and other kind of jobs that you'd assume that were very high paying. They're still having trouble filling those positions. So it's really perplexing about how and why these companies are unable to fill not only what you would assume would be like an entry level job with wages that would probably be on par with, you know, those kinds of jobs, but also higher paying jobs are having a difficult time finding willing applicants.
And you spoke to a woman who owns a business called Fit for Mom. It has been widely reported that the pandemic is setting back women's progress in the workforce specifically. Do we know if that could be another factor at play?
Yeah, so I spoke to Jessica Peralta, and she's the owner for Fit for Mom Las Vegas. She says that she had 27 employees before the pandemic. Now she's down to 9. So she's lost a third of her workforce from people, mostly women, who left for a variety of reasons, she says. Some people have moved back out of state to be near family members in this kind of trying time, to be around like a more of a network of family support. Other people have left because they've had to, specifically women, they've had to take on a lot of responsibilities. Distance learning for children, for school-age children, is a big thing. Children have been learning from home for the better part of a year now, only recently going back. So it really fell a lot of times on women in the home and their moms to watch over the kids and take care of them while they were distance learning. And a lot of women had left the workforce because of that. And so now we're kind of seeing this maybe slow return because the economy is not completely back open. There's maybe the childcare may be an issue, distance learning, all sorts of different things are still in play that maybe prevent women from being able to go back into the workforce. So in the story, we mentioned that specifically women have had to bear the brunt of a lot of the responsibilities, and a lot of people, women specifically, have lost or left their jobs because of other responsibilities.
Are there any solutions being tossed around? Is this something elected officials are talking about?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are really at play. A lot of people, and the people I spoke to tonight, they're pointing to a number of factors. One is that the COVID pandemic is still not over, and there may be still some fear out there of people that are still afraid of the virus or concerned. Maybe they're caring for somebody, or they have an elderly family member or something like that, and they're just still, it's too much of a risk to go back into the workforce. There's other things such as like remote working. A lot of people, including us, are working from home, and that's been nice for some people. And the appetite for in-work or in-person work just isn't there maybe as much anymore, or it's just not as appealing. And maybe people are holding out for those kinds of jobs. Remote working has been very popular. The other thing that they mentioned that I spoke to, and it's in our reporting that we're going to put on at 11 o'clock tonight, is the fact that there's these unemployment benefits, the $300 per week from the federal government, which is on top of whatever unemployment benefits are available through the state. So just as it is, $300 per week, 4 weeks, $1,200, that's just in the federal. Lump that on top of whatever the state is maybe chipping in, and you're talking about wages that may be on par with jobs that only pay $15 an hour or $10 an hour. And when you compare those two, a person may say, look, like, I'd rather just stay on unemployment and collect those benefits versus going to work and maybe risking myself or having to pay for childcare or make other arrangements, travel to a job or something like that. So those are all things that are being talked about. These federal unemployment goes through the September of this year. So we still have a few more months until that kind of expires, and we'll see what happens after that. But there's been a lot of talk. A lot of elected officials on both sides of the aisle have been saying something needs to be done. There's these jobs, the economy is starting to get back into business, but now you're having these federal unemployment benefits kind of competing with maybe wages, and that's causing another issue in terms of people's willingness to go back into the workforce.
Joe, thank you so much for your time on this.
Thanks for watching the Daily Debrief on your streaming device. If you missed any part of this week's program, just hit the back button on your remote, then scroll down until you see KTNV Digital Exclusives. There you're going to find this show and also all of our dedicated streaming content. And stay tuned for more from 13 Action News after the break. And check us out anytime right here on KTNV Streaming Las Vegas News on your time.